Robert Mitchum finally talks about Marilyn Monroe. Robert Mitchum was born Robert Charles Durr Mitchum on August 6, 1917 in Bridgeport, Connecticut. He grew up without much money. His early life was really hard. His dad died in a train accident when Robert was just a little kid, and his family had to struggle to survive. His mom, Anne Harriet Gunderson Mitchum, did everything she could to raise her three kids during the Great Depression. She taught them to be tough and independent, and these qualities became a big part of how Mitchum acted in movies later on. When Mitchum was young, he was wild and didn't like following rules. He left home when he was only 14, hopping on trains and traveling all over the country during the Depression. This adventure shaped how he saw the world and made him stronger. He did all kinds of random jobs like digging ditches, boxing, writing poetry for other people, and he even spent some time in a southern chain gang prison after getting arrested for being homeless. These tough experiences helped him understand what life was like for people who were struggling, and this helped him play characters like rebels, wanderers, and men with troubled pasts. Mitchum started acting almost by accident. In the early 1940s, after he married Dorothy Spence, who was the love of his life and stayed with him forever, he got a job at Lockheed Aircraft in California. He also worked part-time doing plays at local theaters. People noticed his natural charm and his deep, strong voice right away. After getting small parts in movies, Mitchum signed a contract with RKO Pictures, and he started building his reputation as a really good actor. His early performances in cowboy movies and war films like 30 Seconds Over Tokyo from 1944 and The Story of G.I. Joe from 1945 got him great reviews. The second one even got him his first and only Oscar nomination for Best Supporting Actor. By the late 1940s and 1950s, Robert Mitchum had become a leading man famous for his cool, mysterious presence that seemed totally natural. He became a huge star in film noir movies, appearing in classics like Out of the Past from 1947, Crossfire from 1947, and The Big Steal from 1949. His performances showed the tired, negative heroes that made these movies famous, men who seemed both morally unclear and deeply human. His smooth, deep voice and simple acting style made him different in an industry where most actors were very dramatic. Mitchum didn't really act so much as he just existed on screen, and audiences couldn't look away from him. But Mitchum's career had some scandals too. In 1948, he got arrested for having marijuana, which was a huge scandal that could have destroyed most careers back then. But Mitchum handled it with his usual relaxed attitude, spent a short time in jail, and came back to Hollywood even more mysterious than before. Instead of ruining his reputation, the incident just added to his bad boy image, the rebel who made his own rules both in movies and in real life. Through the 1950s and 1960s, Mitchum showed he was one of the most talented actors in Hollywood. He starred in many different kinds of movies, from westerns like River of No Return from 1954 with Marilyn Monroe, to scary psychological thrillers like The Night of the Hunter from 1955. In that movie, his creepy performance as the killer preacher Harry Powell is still one of the most terrifying performances in movie history. Later, in Cape Fear from 1962, he played another scary character, the revenge-seeking ex-prisoner Max Cady, giving one of his most famous performances. Even though he was famous, Mitchum never seemed impressed by the fancy side of Hollywood. He was known for being humble, funny, and for not taking the movie business too seriously. The people he worked with often said that Mitchum could fall asleep between filming scenes and then give a perfect performance the second the cameras started rolling. Under his tough outside was a smart and sensitive man who loved his family deeply and had a passion for music. He even made 2 albums of his own, one of calypso music and another of country songs, showing off his rich, musical voice. As the years went by, Mitchum smoothly moved into playing supporting characters, proving that getting older couldn't weaken his powerful screen presence. He appeared in praised films like Ryan's Daughter from 1970, The Friends of Eddie Coyle from 1973, and Farewell, My Lovely from 1975, where he played the tired noir character again with amazing skill. His last major performances, including his role in Dead Man from 1995, were perfect tributes to a man who had lived and breathed movies for over 50 years. In the fall of 1933, when the cool autumn air blew across Delaware's countryside, a 16-year-old Robert Mitchum met the girl who would become the most important person in his life, 14-year-old Dorothy Spence. They met at a local swimming spot near Camden, Delaware, a popular hangout for neighborhood kids. Mitchum, who was already a restless and rebellious teenager known for being funny and adventurous, was immediately attracted to Dorothy's quiet intelligence and natural charm. She had a sweet, small-town grace that was different from Mitchum's more unpredictable personality. But that very difference fascinated him. Dorothy wasn't just pretty. She was also down-to-earth and thoughtful, qualities that would later help balance Mitchum's crazy career and larger-than-life personality. Dorothy was a classmate of Mitchum's younger brother, John, which made their meeting even more special. Actually, she had briefly dated John before Mitchum came along, a detail that amused and embarrassed the younger brother, but never caused any real problems between them. The Mitchum family was close and full of strong personalities, and Dorothy coming into their lives brought a kind of gentle balance. From the moment Mitchum met her, he was head over heels. Friends and family later remembered that he talked about Dorothy with an intensity that was unusual for his age. Despite his tough outside and carefree attitude, he was already showing signs of deep loyalty and romantic feelings. By the time Mitchum left Delaware for California in 1934, he and Dorothy had formed a serious relationship that had grown way beyond just a teenage romance. He was looking for opportunities on the West Coast, first doing odd jobs and eventually getting into acting, while Dorothy stayed behind to finish school. She was a smart and hard-working student who did great in her studies before going to college in Philadelphia. Their relationship survived the challenges of being far apart, uncertainty, and the Great Depression, proof of their emotional connection and faith in each other. Mitchum wrote to her often, his letters filled with humor and longing. Dorothy, in turn, supported him with encouraging words, even when his future seemed uncertain, and his letters hinted at hardship and self-doubt. After several years of long-distance devotion, Robert Mitchum and Dorothy Spence got married on March 16, 1940. The ceremony was a simple event held not in a big church or courthouse, but in the kitchen of a Methodist minister in Dover, Delaware. There was no big celebration, no fancy clothes, and no Hollywood glamour, just two young people promising their lives to each other with honesty and hope. The simplicity of that moment showed who they were: practical, humble, and quietly committed. Mitchum's later fame would make him an icon of cool detachment, but behind that image was a man who had found stability and purpose in his marriage. Shortly after their wedding, Mitchum brought Dorothy west to Los Angeles, a city buzzing with promise and unpredictability. At first, their life there was nothing like the luxury that would come later with his stardom. Mitchum worked at the Lockheed Aircraft Corporation, a major employer during the pre-war years, doing exhausting manual labor on assembly lines to support his young wife. He worked long shifts and came home tired, but Dorothy's presence gave him the motivation to keep going. It was during this time that he started trying acting, first through small theater groups and extra work that eventually led to movie roles. In June 1942, Mitchum finally got steady work in Hollywood, the beginning of a career that would make him one of the most lasting figures in American cinema. As Mitchum's fame started to grow, his family life with Dorothy remained his emotional foundation. The couple had their first son, James Mitchum, on May 8, 1941. James would grow up to follow in his father's footsteps, building his own acting career and eventually earning recognition for his work in films. Their second son, Christopher, was born on October 16, 1943, and he also became an actor known for his roles in action and adventure films throughout the 1970s. Finally, their daughter Petrine was born on March 3, 1952. Unlike her brothers, she chose a career behind the scenes as a writer, creating works that explored her father's complicated legacy and the inner world of Hollywood's golden age. For decades, Hollywood insiders and film historians have wondered about the true nature of Robert Mitchum's relationship with Marilyn Monroe. The two iconic stars appeared together on screen in the 1954 film River of No Return, a movie that became legendary not only for its beautiful scenery, but also for the tension, attraction, and complicated dynamics between its two leads. Though Mitchum had stayed mostly quiet about Monroe for most of his life, preferring to avoid personal questions with his trademark cool indifference, he eventually opened up in rare interviews late in his career. His thoughts were both tender and brutally honest, showing a side of Monroe few people ever saw. "She was a lost child in a woman's body," Mitchum said, his deep voice carrying the weight of time and memory. People saw the blonde hair, the curves, the walk, but inside she was terrified most of the time. "She wanted love, but Hollywood only knew how to sell her." Mitchum's words cut through the glamour that surrounded Monroe, painting a picture of a woman who was both fragile and fiercely determined. He remembered how on the set of River of No Return, Monroe often struggled with the demands of the shoot. The film was physically exhausting, filmed in the cold Canadian wilderness with dangerous river rapids and unpredictable weather. But Mitchum noted that her greatest battles were not with nature, but with her own insecurities. "She was scared of being replaced," he continued. "Every take, every scene, she worried it wasn't good enough. You could see it in her eyes. She needed reassurance all the time, and the studio system didn't give that to her. They treated her like a product, not a person." Mitchum, who was famously self-confident and down-to-earth, developed a protective fondness for Monroe during the shoot. Despite their differences, his rough-edged masculinity versus her delicate sensuality, there was a mutual respect between them. "She was late a lot, sure," Mitchum admitted with a dry grin. "But when the camera rolled, no one could take their eyes off her. She had that thing you can't fake, something that came from somewhere deep and painful." Behind the scenes, Mitchum was one of the few people who refused to put Monroe down. "I didn't talk down to her," he said. "Everyone else treated her like she was dumb, but she wasn't. She was smart, just damaged." He talked about how she would sometimes open up to him between takes, telling him about her struggles with fame, her troubled childhood, and the loneliness that haunted her despite being the most desired woman in the world. "She told me once," Mitchum remembered quietly, "that being famous felt like being trapped in a glass box. Everyone could see her, but no one could hear her." Their friendship never turned into romance, though the chemistry between them was undeniable. Mitchum respected her too much to take advantage of her vulnerability. "I wasn't about to be another guy who used her," he said. She'd already had enough of that. She needed a friend, not another man with an angle. His tone, even years later, carried a trace of sadness, perhaps for what she went through, or perhaps for what might have been if Monroe had found more people like him in her life. When Monroe died in 1962, Mitchum was deeply affected. He rarely talked about it publicly, but in private conversations, he expressed his disappointment with Hollywood's cruelty. "They killed her," he said bluntly, "not with a gun or a knife, but with pressure, with lies, with loneliness. She gave them everything, and they took it all until there was nothing left." His words showed not just grief, but a bitterness toward an industry that destroyed its brightest stars. In his later years, Mitchum often thought about how misunderstood Monroe truly was. "She wasn't stupid and she wasn't crazy," he said. "She was just too gentle for a world that wanted her to be steel." His memories of her weren't the typical tales of scandal or gossip that surrounded Monroe's name. They were rooted in compassion, understanding, and a rare sense of humanity. "If people had treated her like a person instead of a fantasy," he said, "she might still be here." Through his delayed honesty, Robert Mitchum revealed the complex human side of Marilyn Monroe, a woman who longed for love and acceptance in an industry built on illusion. His words, decades after her death, served as both a tribute and a warning, that even the most radiant stars can be destroyed by the very light that made them shine. A lifelong heavy smoker, Mitchum died in his sleep at 5 a.m. on July 1, 1997, at his home in Santa Barbara, California, from complications of lung cancer and emphysema. His wife of 57 years, Dorothy, was by his